The last person Elena Marlowe ever looked at was the one she feared most. A college town thought her disappearance was a tragic accident, until investigators uncovered the chilling trail she left behind. Who was the shadow following her for weeks? And why did every camera angle capturing her final moments end too soon? Because buried inside her last voice note, seconds before it cuts out, is a single whispered word that will change everything you think you know about this case. And it's the name no one wanted to hear. Welcome to Unforgotten Crimes. Thanks to all my viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay tuned for daily true crime updates. Don't forget to subscribe. The night Elena Marlowe disappeared began like any other in the quiet college town of Ashwick. Calm streets, late autumn air, the hum of distant traffic settling into silence. Elena, 22 years old, bright-eyed, and known for balancing her cafe job with an overloaded academic schedule, clocked out at 9:42 p.m. Her co-workers remembered the moment with an unsettling clarity. She smiled, waved, and promised she'd text once she got home. She never did. The cafe's exterior cameras picked her up immediately. She stepped into the glow of the streetlights, her scarf pulled high against the wind, her steps brisk but unhurried. The camera's timestamp blinked steadily. 21 hours 44 minutes and 3 seconds. Elena turned left toward the main road, walking with her usual determined stride. Nothing appeared unusual, no one following, no strange vehicles creeping by. Just a young woman heading home after a long shift. But the footage carried a tension no one recognized at first. The streetlight above her flickered in irregular bursts, briefly plunging her into darkness before flashing her silhouette back into view. Investigators would later describe the scene as eerily cinematic, the kind of visual that burrows into the viewer's memory. At the time, it was simply routine surveillance. Elena's co-workers, soft-spoken Mia, who closed the register with her, and Jacob, who finished dishes in the back, struggled through their interviews. Mia's voice cracked as she said, she was the kind of person who made things feel lighter, even on bad days. Jacob added, she had plans. Big ones. Grad school, travel. She wasn't the type to just disappear. The footage followed Elena for 2 full blocks. She adjusted her bag strap, paused to tuck a loose curl behind her ear, then resumed walking. A car passed by but didn't slow. A bicyclist crossed the frame but never looked in her direction. Everything seemed painfully ordinary, until the sequence ended far sooner than it should have. At 21 hours 46 minutes and 27 seconds, the camera froze. Not faded, not glitched, froze. A single still frame remained on screen for several seconds before cutting to static. When the feed resumed, Elena was gone from view, the sidewalk empty, the streetlight still flickering as if nothing had happened. Detectives initially chalked it up to hardware failure, aging systems, poor maintenance, typical for small-town infrastructure. But when they reviewed the camera's internal log, something didn't add up. The last 11 seconds before the freeze were missing entirely, overwritten by a block of corrupted data. The lead investigator leaned in, frowning. This isn't malfunction, he muttered. Someone did this. The security technician confirms what detectives fear most. The final camera angle wasn't broken. It was tampered with. The discovery that someone had tampered with the last camera to capture Elena alive sent a tremor through the investigation. Detectives shifted focus from the cold technical evidence to the warm, beating world Elena lived in, a world now frozen in place, waiting to be understood. To move forward, they had to step backward into her life, into the dreams she carried and the relationships that tethered her to this small town. Elena Marlowe had always been described as the bright one. The girl teachers remembered long after graduation and neighbors greeted by name. She was a year away from finishing her psychology degree. Working nights at the cafe to pay for tuition she refused to let burden her single mother. Her days were a blur of classes, volunteer hours, and tutoring sessions. Her nights were filled with quiet routines and long voice note journals she recorded on her phone. Private reflections no one else heard. Her younger sister, Sophie, only 17, sat curled on the living room couch during her interview. clutching a sweatshirt that still smelled faintly like Elena's perfume. "She wanted to get us out of here someday," Sophie whispered. "A place where we could both breathe a little more." When asked if Elena had seemed worried recently, Sophie hesitated before nodding. She didn't say much, but she kept checking the locks. Twice, sometimes 3 times. Friends painted a picture of Elena that made her disappearance feel even more impossible. Emily, her closest friend on campus, smiled tearfully while describing their late-night study sessions and Elena's habit of doodling suns in the margins of her notebooks. She always believed things would work out, even when they weren't. But Emily's expression shifted when Detective Rowan asked if anything unusual had happened in the weeks before Elena vanished. After a long silence, she admitted, "There was an argument. Something she didn't want to talk about. She said it wasn't important, but she looked shaken." The investigative team played Elena's final voice note, uncovered from her main phone. "I think someone followed me yesterday. Maybe I'm imagining it. I don't want to tell anyone yet. It's probably nothing." Her voice was calm but tight, like she was trying to soothe herself into rationality. Detectives felt the tone beneath the words, the subtle tremor suggesting it wasn't nothing. As investigators combed through her apartment, they noted Elena's tidy habits. Books stacked neatly, color-coded planners, a half-finished sketch beside a cup of cold tea. Nothing seemed disturbed. Nothing seemed staged. But the sense of unease Sophie mentioned lingered faintly in the air. Then one officer opened a small storage drawer beneath Elena's bed. Inside lay a phone no one recognized. Not broken. Not old. Not logged into anything. Hidden. Police uncover Elena's secret second phone. Its screen glowing to life with a notification Elena never saw. The discovery of Elena's hidden second phone pushed the investigation into a new phase. One where every small, mundane detail of her life suddenly felt weighted with meaning. Detectives worked through the night, cross-referencing the device with her primary phone, studying her last-week patterns as if the truth were tucked between timestamps and quiet habits she never imagined would matter. Her messages told a story she never said out loud. On the second phone, an unknown number appeared again and again, short, clipped texts, rarely answered by Elena. "You there? Saw you tonight. Why won't you just respond?" Some nights, the messages came within minutes of her leaving work. Others appeared just after she got home. To investigators, it suggested the sender wasn't simply contacting her. He was watching her. More unsettling was a rideshare cancellation 2 days before she vanished. Elena had apparently booked a car home during a storm, but the request was canceled, manually. At 8:57 p.m. Elena was still working the counter then. She couldn't have canceled it herself. The app showed no sign of a glitch. Then there was the missing thread. A fully deleted conversation from her primary phone, wiped clean. Not even partial fragments could be recovered, an uncommon level of precision for the average user. Whoever she spoke to, she didn't want anyone else to see, or someone didn't want investigators to see. Detective Rowan revisited the apartment complex, hoping for fresh eyes. A neighbor on the second floor, Mrs. Kowalski, mentioned something she hadn't thought was important before. "There was a man," she said, pressing her fingers nervously together, "sitting in a car across the street. Same car, same spot, 3 nights in a row. He never got out. I noticed because he kept the engine running." Her description was vague. Dark jacket, cap pulled low, but enough to deepen the growing sense that Elena had been under quiet surveillance. With digital forensics and witness statements aligning, investigators laid out Elena's week on a chronological board. Her routine was painfully consistent. Cafe, walk home, brief study session, voice notes. But now, overlaying her path were new data points, unfamiliar phone pings, the suspicious rideshare incident, repeated sightings of the idling vehicle. Finally, they pulled every CCTV camera within a 3-block radius of her nightly walk. And there it was, a blurred silhouette appearing again and again, sometimes half a block behind her, sometimes lingering at intersections just long enough to stay out of her direct line of sight. A figure moving when she moved, pausing when she paused. A shadow. Detectives enhanced frame after frame, adjusting contrast, isolating movement, connecting posture, gait, clothing. After hours of analysis, the shape began forming into someone real, someone recognizable. The shadow figure is identified, but it's not the person investigators were expecting. The shadowy figure captured on multiple CCTV angles was not a stranger lurking in the dark. It was Ryan Hale, Elena's boyfriend of nearly 8 months. The revelation sent a ripple of confusion through the investigative team. If Ryan was simply heading home from class, as he'd initially claimed, why had he been following the exact path Elena took? Always at a distance, always careful to stay just outside her visible periphery? When detectives brought him in for questioning, Ryan appeared composed in a way that felt rehearsed. He was soft-spoken, hands folded tightly in his lap, eyes red-rimmed but dry. "I just want her found," he said more than once. "Please, I'll tell you anything." On the surface, he seemed cooperative, almost painfully polite. But beneath that calm exterior was a flicker. Something coiled, restrained. Digital forensics uncovered behavior that made his composure harder to trust. The night Elena vanished, Ryan had checked her phone's shared location 10 separate times, including twice after 9:40 p.m., the minutes marking her final appearance on CCTV. When asked why, he offered a thin explanation. "She was walking home alone. She gets nervous at night. I just wanted to be sure she was okay." His tone attempted concern, but it didn't match the evidence. Checking once might be caring, but 10 times? Investigators exchanged subtle, knowing glances. A friend from campus, Emily, was brought in again for clarity. When she learned Ryan was being questioned, she hesitated, then admitted something she'd held back. Elena mentioned his jealousy was getting worse. He didn't like her talking to people in her study group. Sometimes he'd show up without telling her. Emily bit her lip. She brushed it off like it was nothing, but it didn't feel like nothing. When detectives relayed this to Ryan, he swallowed hard, shoulders tightening. "I wasn't jealous," he insisted. "She just kept things from me sometimes. I worried." His voice cracked, frustration or fear, the detectives couldn't tell. But he never raised his voice, never lashed out. He remained steady, almost eerily controlled. Pressed further about the CCTV sightings, Ryan leaned into his explanation. He had been on his way to a friend's apartment near the cafe and happened to overlap with Elena's route. Coincidence, he claimed. A misunderstanding amplified by worry and grief. Detectives were ready to challenge him, until his alibi began to check out. Minute-stamped receipts placed him at a convenience store exactly when he said. Security footage from the friend's apartment building showed his arrival precisely 2 minutes after the timestamp on his last phone check. Every detail locked into place with uncomfortable precision. The red herring solidified. Ryan, unsettling as some of his behaviors were, wasn't lying. Ryan's alibi holds perfectly, down to the minute, down to the receipt, down to the second. The confirmation of Ryan's airtight alibi forced investigators back to the uncomfortable realization that Elena's life held secrets no one had been prepared to confront. If her boyfriend wasn't the shadow trailing her, then someone else had stepped into her routine long before she vanished. That suspicion hardened when campus records revealed Elena had quietly scheduled 3 counseling sessions in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. Appointments she never mentioned to her family or closest friends. Detective Rowan met with the university counselor, who spoke carefully, bound by confidentiality but shaken by the news. She described Elena as distressed but determined, a young woman struggling to balance fear with reason. While specific disclosures couldn't be shared, the counselor confirmed one thing. Elena had expressed anxiety about a persistent admirer, someone who seemed convinced they shared a connection Elena did not reciprocate. She had refused to name him, afraid of causing escalation. She hoped it would simply fade, the counselor said softly. To better understand Elena's private thoughts, the investigative team turned to the journals and voice notes retrieved from her devices. One reconstructed entry, pieced together from deleted fragments on her primary phone, chilled them. "He isn't dangerous, just intense. I keep seeing him around campus. Maybe he's harmless. I don't want to overreact." Another fragment hinted at second-guessing herself. What if I'm imagining it? But the hidden phone told a different story. Once forensics cracked the device, they traced it to an anonymous social media account under the name Lenmar Echo. The account looked dormant at first glance. No posts, no friends, no visible activity. Then investigators opened the message requests. Dozens of unread messages cascaded down the screen, all from a single username, Guardian. The tone shifted across the timeline. The earliest messages were overly polite, almost flattering. You didn't see me today. Hope you're okay. I think we understand each other. Weeks later, the tone sharpened. Why do you keep ignoring me? I'm trying to protect you. Then the messages turned obsessive. You don't realize what's happening. We're meant to stay connected. Detectives exchanged tense looks as they scrolled. Guardian referenced specific locations, hours, even clothing Elena wore. Details he could only know if he watched her closely. At the bottom of the thread, time-stamped the night she disappeared. One final unread message waited like a loaded weapon. I'm done waiting. We end this tonight. The discovery reframed everything investigators thought they knew. This wasn't random or impulsive. It was calculated and personal. As they carefully prepared to trace the digital trail behind the alias, one truth settled in. Guardian wasn't finished. Whoever he was, he had waited for the moment Elena stopped responding. Now it was their turn to follow him. One message reads, I'm done waiting. We end this tonight. The name behind the Guardian account surfaced after only a few hours of digital tracing. Miles Dre, a former classmate who had once shared 2 psychology electives with Elena. Detectives remembered him from attendance lists. Quiet, polite, rarely speaking unless called upon. At first glance, nothing about him resembled a threat. But the messages told a different story, one that stretched far beyond casual admiration. The discovery pushed the investigation down a darker, far more personal path. Interviews with peers revealed how Miles's behavior had shifted over the past year. Classmates described him initially as shy and awkward, the kind of student who lingered at the edges of group projects, grateful for even brief conversation. But somewhere along the line, admiration became fixation. A student from their research lab recalled Miles asking repeated questions about Elena's schedule. Another remembered him showing up outside the library, pretending coincidence. He seemed harmless, one classmate said. Just intense. When detectives searched Miles's apartment, the escalation became undeniable. His browser history mapped a psychological slide from insecurity to obsession. Articles about reading signs of unspoken interest appeared beside searches like how to track someone without them knowing and discrete GPS methods. His bookmarks included Elena's public posts, saved repeatedly across accounts. Yet the apartment itself was immaculate, almost painfully organized, as if chaos had been pushed entirely into the digital realm. Miles's interrogation revealed a different facet of him, calm, controlled, and disturbingly detached. He acknowledged knowing Elena but denied there was anything unusual about their interactions. She understood me, he insisted, voice steady. We didn't have to talk for her to feel it. When questioned about the messages, he smiled faintly, claiming the username Guardian was symbolic. I only wanted her safe. People misunderstood my intentions. His expression never cracked. Not when detectives confronted him with timestamps. Not when they mentioned the threats implied in the final message. He leaned back in his chair, fingers interlaced, as though the situation puzzled him more than frightened him. Even the mention of Elena's disappearance failed to shake his composure. I had nothing to do with that, he said simply. You're looking in the wrong direction. But contradictions emerged quickly. Forensics revealed that the last message from Guardian had been sent from within a narrow radius around the cafe. Phone tower pings placed Miles's device in the area shortly before Elena left work. He claimed coincidence again, insisting he was meeting someone nearby. No witness confirmed the claim. Then a break arrived. A woman who frequented the cafe stepped forward after seeing Miles's photo online. She recognized him immediately. He was there that night, she told detectives. Standing across the street, watching the door. A witness places Miles near Elena's cafe the night she vanished. By the time investigators pieced together Elena's final hours, the timeline felt like a tightening vice. Every minute accounted for, every movement shadowed by something unseen. The storm that rolled in that night had been mild on the forecast, just scattered showers. But by dusk the rain had thickened into a relentless curtain. The cafe staff remembered Elena closing early, wiping down the counters with quick, distracted motions. She texted her sister at 9:27 p.m., "Heading home soon. Save me some tea." Sophie replied instantly, unaware it would be their final exchange. Security footage confirmed Elena locked the cafe door at 9:42 p.m., tugging her hood over her hair as the storm intensified. Detectives replayed the moment repeatedly. Her glance over her shoulder, the slight stumble as thunder cracked above her. At first, they interpreted her tension as normal bad weather nerves. Only later did they connect it to something far more chilling. The cell tower ping from another device moving almost identically behind her. When the team synced both signal patterns, the truth emerged. Someone walked the same road she walked, slowed when she slowed, stopped when she paused beneath the awning at the corner store to check her phone. It wasn't random overlap. It was mirroring, predatory, patient. Elena's last voice note, recovered from her primary phone, captured this growing fear. Her whisper trembled under the sound of rain. "Someone's out here." Then a shaky exhale, and footsteps splashing too close behind her. As she continued toward the residential stretch leading to her apartment, the storm swallowed most public visibility. That made the neighbor's doorbell camera all the more vital. The grainy footage showed two blurred figures approaching from opposite ends of the sidewalk. Elena's smaller frame moved steadily, shoulders hunched against the downpour. The second figure remained distant at first, then quickened. Not enough to seem aggressive, but enough to close the gap inch by inch. Investigators studied the faint outline. Tall, lean, wearing a dark hooded jacket. The same build the cafe witness described. The same outline seen in the earlier CCTV shadows. As Elena passed the camera's viewpoint, she turned slightly, just enough to reveal tension in her posture, as though she sensed someone behind her but didn't want to make it obvious. Seconds later, the second silhouette slipped partially into view, closer now, too close. The frame shook with wind, then blurred as raindrops streaked across the lens. What happened beyond that camera's angle would remain agonizingly unseen, but the final audio from Elena's phone filled the silence investigators feared most. Her breath hitched, a soft gasp pulling inward, followed by a sudden interruption, as though something or someone cut her words short. Elena's voice note ends with a single breath, cut mid-word. Through CCTV sync, GPS logs, and Miles's own shifting statements, investigators reconstructed the final stretch of Elena's walk with a precision that felt almost cruel. The storm-muted streets blurred the edges of the footage, yet every timestamp aligned with unnerving clarity. Moments after Elena's final breathy voice note cut off, the shadowy figure seen trailing her stepped fully into view on a municipal camera positioned near the entrance of the wooded footpath. The figure's gait, posture, and hesitation matched Miles Dre with uncomfortable accuracy. He didn't attack her, at least nothing captured showed physical harm. Instead, when the feeds were enhanced, investigators saw him closing the distance with frantic purpose. He called her name once. She turned, startled but not yet fleeing. Miles's mouth moved rapidly, almost desperately, though the audio was drowned by wind and rain. Analysts later used lip-reading software to interpret fragments. "Please, listen. Stop ignoring destiny." That word appeared repeatedly, as though he clung to it like a promise only he understood. The synced GPS points sealed the timeline. Elena's device pinged near the trail's entrance at the same moment Miles's phone, set to low power mode as if he'd prepared for a long night, registered the same coordinates. Their signals merged, overlapped, then drifted slowly deeper into the wooded area. No sudden sprint, no violent scuffle, just two dots moving together under the canopy of storm-thickened trees. What the last camera captured before the trail vanished into darkness was almost mundane. Miles blocking Elena's path, arms raised not in threat but in pleading. Her shoulders were tense, her stance angled as if deciding between calming him or running. Rain blurred the moment she stepped backward, hesitated, and spoke, her expression tight, her eyes scanning for anyone else on the empty street. Then both figures slipped beyond the final arc of the street lamp, swallowed by the woods. From there, the trail offered no more witnesses. Only the devices continued reporting. Elena's phone stopped transmitting first, abruptly and without error codes, a sign it was powered off manually. Miles's signal lingered for nearly 7 more minutes before it too vanished. The exact moment everything broke remained hidden under that canopy of leaves and storm water. At dawn, search teams began their sweep, boots sinking into mud softened overnight. 30 yards off the main path, partially buried beneath wet leaves and a fallen branch, they discovered something that sent a cold jolt through the command tent. A dark jacket, carefully folded, tucked out of sight. And on the inner lining, barely visible until the fabric was lifted, lay the faintest trace of something unmistakably human. The discovery shifted the investigation's tone, turning quiet suspicion into a dawning certainty that something far darker had unfolded. Miles didn't run. He retreated into a rehearsed quiet that investigators swiftly recognized. After the discovery of his jacket, he requested a lawyer, then insisted he had nothing to hide. But silence, they knew, could be a kind of architecture, each omission a brick reinforcing a lie. Forensic analysts began pulling apart the timeline from the night Elena vanished. Miles's phone, once wiped to factory settings, still contained echoes of its former data, scraps of deleted searches that hinted at preparation, spoof GPS location, timestamp editing app, and most damning, how long until a phone stops pinging after power off. They recovered a partially corrupted GPS log showing his car had never traveled to the neighboring town where he claimed to be. The journey was an illusion, stitched together with manipulated timestamps and a rideshare account he used only once. Yet the most incriminating fragment came from a gas station security system near the woods. A receipt, timestamped just minutes after Elena's phone went dark, showed Miles purchasing gloves and a pack of disposable wipes. When confronted, he claimed the items were for cleaning his car, though footage showed him discarding the unopened wipes behind the store. Investigators believed they had finally tightened the noose, until a discovery fractured their certainty. Elena's missing bag, long thought taken during the confrontation, was found by a highway cleanup crew nearly 12 miles from the wooded trail. The distance alone suggested intent. Someone had wanted it far from where she was last seen. But the contents deepened the mystery. Her wallet remained, cash untouched. Her keys were missing, and the fabric bore faint, smeared streaks. Investigators immediately swabbed for DNA. Hours later, the results arrived, brief, clinical, devastating. The genetic profile didn't match Miles. It didn't match Ryan. It didn't match anyone in the database. Elena hadn't been alone with the man they feared most. Someone else had touched her final belongings. Someone neither accounted for nor yet imagined. The revelation detonated through the command center, transforming what seemed like a tightening circle into a widening maze. If another presence had been there, if another hand had carried the bag, then the narrative investigators built around Miles's obsession was only a fraction of the truth. Detectives returned to every scrap of footage, every doorbell camera, every corner of Elena's routine, searching for a flicker of an unseen figure. Someone who moved when Miles did not. Someone who slipped between digital gaps with practiced ease. For the first time, investigators whispered the possibility they had been watching the wrong threat all along. The woods hid more than one secret that night. And the new DNA profile, belonging to no one in their sights, shifted the investigation's direction with chilling finality. The revelation of unmatched DNA shifts the investigation into relentless precision, and detectives turn back to the digital trail where electronics never truly forget. Phones, laptops, and cloud backups are scraped again, this time with a new premise. Miles didn't just hide his steps. He orchestrated misdirection. The bag's location, once a puzzle, begins to look like a deliberate performance. Forensic specialists recovered deleted metadata from Elena's second phone, revealing a file transfer that occurred hours after she vanished. Something Miles never should have had access to. His own device, though scrubbed, betrays him with cached maps indicating multiple trips toward the highway stretch where Elena's bag was later found. Every digital footprint points to intent, not panic. Then comes the break. A sporting goods store submits archived security footage. Detectives watch as Miles walks inside calmly, selecting gloves, rope, and a compact utility knife. He pays in cash, but the timestamp places him 3 days before Elena's disappearance, preparing with unnerving purpose. When confronted, he claims they were camping supplies, though no record of any trip exists. Ryan, who had been a frustrating distraction in the early investigation, returns to the station with new clarity. He speaks about Miles's jealousy, how Miles once cornered him after class, warning him to keep distance from what isn't yours. Ryan admits he dismissed it as awkward posturing, but in light of Elena's fears, the memory now feels chillingly significant. His testimony cements a pattern. Miles monitoring, controlling, waiting. Soil analysis from Miles's car and shoes delivers the final blow. Microscopic traces match the exact composition of the wooded path where Elena was last seen. Rare clay particulates not found anywhere else nearby. Confronted with the science, Miles's carefully cultivated calm wavers for the first time. His hands tremble. He asks for water. His voice, usually measured, fractures around short, shallow breaths. Interrogators lean in, pressing with quiet precision. Evidence is stacked before him. His purchases, his movements, his digital contradictions. Even the bag, a manipulated prop meant to confuse detectives, now serves as damning proof of his intent. Miles tries to speak, but only a strangled sound emerges. For weeks he performed detachment, believing logic and silence would shield him. But in this room, with truth closing around him, the mask finally begins to splinter. Detectives exchange glances, sensing the shift. Miles's shoulders curl inward, his eyes darting toward the door as if escape remains possible. A single drop of sweat slides down his temple. When the lead investigator places the soil report before him, Miles's composure cracks. Miles's facade doesn't shatter all at once. It fractures slowly, as though every question chips away at a carefully constructed inner world. The interrogation room feels smaller now, compressed by the weight of evidence and his own unraveling composure. Detectives speak softly, steadily, avoiding confrontation. They know he responds more to pressure when it comes wrapped in calm. The transition is seamless from their last approach, soil samples, digital traces, the sporting goods footage still fresh between them, and now they wait for the breach. At first, Miles circles back to practice lines. I was worried. She didn't understand. People were trying to use her. But his voice wavers. His hands shake. When he tries to maintain eye contact, he can't. A crack forms, visible as his breathing shifts into quick, shallow bursts, panic rising despite his attempts to steel himself. When the lead investigator replays Elena's final voice note, her trembling whisper, her fear, something inside him snaps. He presses his palms to his eyes, shaking his head over and over as though trying to block the sound physically. Words spill out, jagged, broken. Yes, I followed her. I had to. She wouldn't listen. His voice trembles between self-pity and righteous conviction. She was in danger. There were people watching her. I could see it. She didn't know how vulnerable she was. Detectives let him speak, taking note of every shift in tone. His narrative drifts, protector, victim, savior. He swings wildly between denial and desperate justification, insisting he never meant harm, that he only wanted to make sure she got home, that someone had to keep her safe. When they ask why he cornered her that night in the woods, he stiffens. She was confused. I was trying to explain. She didn't understand what they were planning. I told her I could help, that I knew what she needed. His gaze flickers with a delusional certainty. If she'd just listened, everything would have been fine. Fragments form a chilling portrait. He believed Elena needed protection, even protection from herself. He whispers that she wasn't thinking clearly, that he'd been given signs she was in danger, that he stepped in when others wouldn't. The detective across from him leans forward slowly, grounding the moment. Miles, What happened after she tried to walk away? Miles freezes. Silence stretches. His fingers twitch. I told you. I followed her. I stayed close. His voice thins. I didn't hurt her. I didn't. I swear. But detectives know the pattern. This is where confessions begin bending around the truth he fears most. Because despite everything he has admitted, stalking, obsession, manipulation, Miles still hasn't addressed the heart of the night. Something he's terrified to say. Something only he knows. Something missing. Detectives realize Miles left out one critical truth. The courtroom is packed. Press, students from the college, neighbors who once waved to Elena on quiet afternoons. The atmosphere carries the weight of months of unanswered questions, and the transition from interrogation to trial feels inevitable, as though the truth has been walking everyone here step by step. Prosecutors begin by dismantling the few illusions Miles still clings to, revealing the timeline investigators constructed with digital fragments, CCTV syncs, and the unraveling of his own contradictions. But the most explosive moment comes when the forensic biologist takes the stand. The unknown DNA found on Elena's discarded bag, once a disturbing lead suggesting another suspect, finally has an identity. It belongs to Daniel Reeves, a local mechanic with no criminal record. The courtroom shifts uneasily as he walks to the stand. Head lowered, shoulders tense. His voice trembles as he describes hearing footsteps and seeing a young woman running, terrified, glancing back as though someone hunted her. I called out to her, asked if she needed help, he says, but she shook her head, kept moving. I picked up her bag because she dropped it, but she was gone before I could reach her. His account confirms what investigators long feared but couldn't prove. Elena tried to escape Miles. She fled into the dark, into the storm, into the path she hoped would save her. She wasn't passive. She wasn't unaware. She fought for her life. That truth hangs heavy in the air. Elena's family takes the stand next. Her younger sister, small, trembling, yet trying to be brave, speaks first. She describes late-night movie marathons, Elena helping her with schoolwork, the dreams they made together. Her mother's testimony fractures the room. The empty bedroom, untouched since the night Elena didn't come home. The sound of her phone no longer buzzing with messages. The way silence has become a permanent resident in their house. The prosecutor closes with precision. Elena didn't die because she crossed paths with danger. She died because Miles constructed a delusion where she belonged to him, where her independence was an offense, her fear a complication, her life a possession to control. The verdict arrives quickly, guilty on all counts. Miles shows no outburst, no anger. Only a blank, hollow stare as a life sentence is read aloud. But for the community, justice doesn't erase the shadow he cast. Memorials appear around campus, candlelight vigils stretch into the night, and students walk in pairs now, glancing behind them because Elena's story changed something fundamental. Fear, once distant, feels personal. As the courtroom empties, Elena's sister steps forward holding a small phone, her hands shaking. She presses play. The room stills. Through soft static and wind, her final voice note emerges. A breath, a whisper. Elena's sister plays her final voice note, revealing one chilling, whispered word, Miles.